Okay, hello, Yanxing. I will call your Chinese name,
Okay.
and I'm really happy that invite you for my lead change assignment. And would you mind like introduce yourself, what the word, what the position, and what the company for you're doing right now?
Yeah, sure. Michael Yanchiho here, Senior Product Manager for our Azure Developer Platform Services, and I'm currently working at Microsoft leading the platform strategy and for our products for the developers.
Okay, great. So I would have three questions for you. The first question would be like, when you doing uh, doing the developer like senior manager in Microsoft, then do you have any experience about like any lead change experience, like how you identify the problem? And when you identify the problem, like how you do that, whether you gather some information or like after you get those information, how you tackle these issues and how you do the strategy to implement after this. Would you like just like for give us some insights and to let me know like what you have done?
Yeah, sure. I think you can start with something that's already readily public, which is the Linux motion within Microsoft. So I'm among one of the earliest sort of pioneers alongside with our team to literally experiment the feasibilities of running our services on Linux and also pushing Linux as major part of our cloud offerings to the customers. In the early days, as we all know, Microsoft is a very Windows-centric company, and then it's kind of hard that change people's mindset to really think about like Linux and like things that are totally outside of our comfort zone. And what we essentially do is I brought a group of engineers and also a group of like product marketing, sales, and a bunch of the partner people from within Microsoft to run through across like a bunch of the different like initiatives outside. For example, like the LinuxCon, the Open Source Con, and also a lot of the open source conferences hosted by our partners or by our customers. And to really just to immerse them that environment and telling them that, hey, how big is the market with Linux, and also how big is the market that the customers are adopting, and also how they're using the technology instead of using our own proprietary software. And within those like learning tours, we sort of identified that there are several issues. Like one, we need to get better at doing Linux. Second, we need to do a lot more on the development and following what the customers are using. Like it's no longer the time that Microsoft leads the crowd. It's a time that we need to follow where the customers uses and where they're habituated to. And then finally, we need to reconvene our teams to really be able to develop something that is closer to the developer experience that the customers wants to use. So essentially, we identify those questions among like joining those events, conferences, and chatting with the customers, and really having those like profound conversations. And then we identify those issues. Then the way how we sort of drive the change is now we have those evidences. We have the anecdotal evidences. We have the data evidences. We work very closely with like IDC, with Gartner, with some of the consulting firms on identifying what are the external opportunities that are out there and that we should go and capture. And we've done a bunch of the different research projects to really support our bullet points. It's kind of like doing, the schoolwork assignment to really prove that, hey, your thesis, your hypothesis, and everything that's actually aligned. And finally, demonstrated our minimum viable product of showing them, hey, this is possible, right? Like we introduced the concept of containers, we introduced the concept of Linux, we introduced the concept of like, early stage microservices, and to really be able to architect that using our own technology and also using the third-party technology and implemented that within our cloud. So that was a pretty good try, and we failed at the very beginning. But then after several tries, several rounds, we actually are able to just get everybody's opinion and try to really build something within half of their comfort zone and half outside of their comfort zone, and start really getting tractions from customers. Because over the course, we've always had like targeted customers working with us who are like the major Fortune 500 companies, and they're willing to take the risk and really just co-experiment with us. And then eventually we were able to roll out a new product. We were able to really, just announce that to the world. And with Satya and also with with our CEO and senior leadership teams like Scott Guthrie and our presidents and whatnot, then we announced that love to the Linux, to the open source world altogether, alongside with the products that are ready for them to use, and also the first batch of the customers that are already using them, and also on part of using the technology to really change the way how they're using our cloud software. So eventually, I would say that was a pretty successful case, and then we then partnered with a bunch of the different partners moving forward on joint developments, joint collaboration, joint product rolling, and even in the co-sale and co-market lines. So essentially, to your question, this is how we lead the change on the open source inside, and also briefly of how we implemented like Linux and open source based technologies within. Of course, there's a lot more stuff that we can drill down into, but yeah, just to give you kind of like a teaser and a higher level overview.
Then can I have some follow-up questions?
Yeah, of course.
Because I will because the first part you mentioned, like when you try to approach the Linux, is like you have to change consumer behaviors. So it's like you try to talk with some of your customer, try to know the consumer insight. So can you like be more specific? Like what kind of customers, like the suppliers, the stakeholders that you talk with? So in order to know like more about their insight.
Yeah, so it's actually very interesting. Yeah, it's actually not we changing the customer behavior. It's actually customers already adopting the new technology that we don't provide today. Like back then, that was the dilemma, right? Like they were already using Linux. They were already using some sort of like open source technology, but Microsoft doesn't have like a solution in there. So we interviewed a bunch of the people. So we have like a lot of the customer bases. We have a lot of the like SIs, ISVs, and also a bunch of the partners around. And essentially, we just go in there and talk to their CTOs and CIOs to really learn, like, hey, what's the things that's bothering you the most when you're moving into the cloud? What's the things that could help you accelerate, and also to help you really, be able to run your application, to run your business more smoothly? Because at the end of the day, technology is meant for helping business development, right? Business growing on the technology, and the technology helps with that purpose. So what we have done is essentially we just sit down and then having those like one-on-one forums or one-to-many forums, and to really collect the insight from them and see, hey, what's the technology that they're using, what's the experience that they want, and also how would they want us to change our product in that aspect. So the listening tour was the kind of the way how we did it.
Then once you get the information like from the CTO, then how you convince your team like to develop the product that really meets the customer need. How you convince, how you like motivate the team.
Yeah, so I think from our team's perspective, it's actually pretty straightforward because we bring them all together during those meetings. So they're all there listening to the customer. So
I see.
Yeah, essentially that changes their perspective right away. And by listening to the customer, they are able to really just get the insights like, direct, instead of like a secondhand, information or anything like that. So that is what changes the whole dynamic, and also changes the perception. Then all we need to do is to actually propose some feasible solutions to our leadership teams to say, hey, we need this, right? We need this many people, we need this much money, we need this much, resources and whatnot, and then be able to drive the result that we are seeing, and also we're hearing from the customers to satisfy their needs.
Okay, so exactly how you create a sense of urgency, it's like you bring your teams sit with the customers to straightforward understand their needs, and if there's anything that's not feasible, then they can like if the customer's demand is unreasonable, like the thing that they want, but exactly not reach that, then you can just communicate right away. Is that how it works?
Yeah, exactly. But mostly we're thinking about it as a listening tour. So mostly they talk and then we tell them, and then we'll come back to come up with some solutions, and then we reconvene with them again, and to show them what we have built, and also what's the prototype, and then to really having them to work with us and see if that works for them. And that's how we gradually get to where their demands are. I mean, they're all big companies and they all know the limitations of technology and whatnot. So typically we didn't really hear much of the crazy demands or crazy, asks, because they all know that what they want and what they don't want. So we're just striving to just get there like closer each time.
I see.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Then during the conversation, you also mentioned like at the first time you have a fail experience. Yeah. And is that fail experience kind of like discourage the team, or how you move on after you have the first fail experience?
Yeah, so to us, it's actually a blessing for having that failure earlier on because we were able to really identify the gaps of like, performance issues, potential like breaches, and also potential vulnerabilities that are happening in our software and also in the services that we were about to roll out. So I would call that actually a failed experiment, but eventually that had fertilizes our like later on success because of those findings at the very early on, and also the customers involved, the entire team involved to really identify where the root cause is. So that was actually very helpful. Instead of like discouraging them, it actually encouraging the developers even more because they're now able to say, oh, we now bump into all these walls and we can now avoid these walls in the moving forward in the future. So that was actually a success instead of like a discouragement, I would say.
Oh, okay. And then I have the last question for you. This is the question I just pop out in my mind. I mean, when you try, because you try to develop a product that really meet the customer need, and for your perspective, you think like involve the person, like the person who didn't want to change in your team. Within your team to talk with the customer, you think this strategy is better, or set aside the people who don't want to change and just work with the people who want to change together? Which one you think is you think is better?
That's a very good question. So in early ages of when we were developing our product in that aspect, we actually pulled together the V team, who are what we call the change agents, like the people who wanted to actually create something cool or coming from outside using a different perspective. So those are the core people that we rely on to really, be the pioneers on creating the product. However, we are still having some of the people who are kind of like, in between. I would not say that they're reluctant to change, but I think they were more conservative when it comes to the change. And it's good to have those people as well because they will tell us, what they have tried before, what they have done before. And we have the scrum meetings, we have those like, the standing scrums help us, really understand, hey, potentially you might be running into those like privacy concerns, like the security concerns, the RBAC, the identity concerns, or other concerns that we might not, foresee. So it's actually a very good mix by having those people who are willing to try to formulate them as a team to really drive that momentum, and then having these people to give them reviews regarding on potential hindsights that they might not see, and to really come up with a product that's equally balanced and also able to really serve all purposes and pass along all of the gates. As you know, Microsoft is a very big company, and everything that we roll out impacts a lot. So we are very cautious about everything that we do, and we're also very cautious about like things that we build to make part of the quality and also the experience across all the services that we roll out. I hope that answered like partly your question there.
Yes, definitely. Okay, thank you. Thank you for the sharing with me, and I really learned a lot, and also know the insights. That's how you lead the change in your team. So thank you very much.
Yeah, totally. Thank you. Appreciate it.